Welcome to the Aaron Harber Show, Election 2020. This is our season finale. We're going to talk with two political experts, veterans, who their combined number of years in Colorado politics exceeds 1,087. So you'll be very impressed with their wisdom. But first, I want to remind everybody, make sure you're registered to vote. You can go online and check your voter registration status. You can even register to vote on Election Day if you're not registered, and you can cast your ballot on Election Day as well. But the preference is mail your ballots in. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, unaffiliated, Green Party, Libertarian, whatever. Make sure you vote and make sure your ballot is delivered by 7 o'clock p.m. on Tuesday, November 3rd. There's all kinds of information you can find with Election 2020. Do watch all of our programs so you're well informed about all the major ballot issues. But right now, we're just going to have some fun. And my first guest on the program is the award-winning political consultant, none other than Steve Welchert, recognized as one of the top campaign experts, not just in the state of Colorado, but in the nation. Steve, great to have you back on the show.
Well, thanks, Aaron. A lot of fun.
And also, my guest, kind of on the other side of the aisle, because Steve rarely helps Republicans, I believe, is the former chairman of the Colorado Republican Party, who has run national campaigns, presidential campaigns, U.S. Senate campaigns. I think he lost a race for dog catcher, but that's another issue, and none other than another veteran of the program, Dick Wadhams. Dick, always a pleasure.
Nice to be with you.
And actually, for those of you who are not old enough to know, Dick was one of my first guests when I first did my first television program. And he was, at the time, had been the campaign manager, just finished winning a big upset. Well, I don't know, I think it was an upset election. He managed Wayne Allard's campaign, and I think you and Scott Chase, who managed Tom Strickland's campaign, came on the show. Is my memory correct, Dick?
It is correct, and Scott and I had a good time, and that was your first show, wasn't it?
It was, so it's etched in my memory. Among
24 years ago, I can't believe it.
Well, you didn't have to say that, but yeah, it was something on that order. Oh, you know, you guys have been, we're going to talk about candidates and issues and all that, but I'm really interested in each of your take, because you have been involved in politics for so long and in so many successful campaigns. You know, I know, Steve, in your case, you keep winning elections for Ed Perlmutter and almost everyone that you help, not 100%. And Dick, you've had some extraordinary victories and just have covered the territory, as well as serving as chair of the GOP here in Colorado. When you look back, and I'm going to say 25 years ago for each of you, I know you were both small children at the time, what's really changed? What's different today about politics? And Dick, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. Well, I think the parties have changed, Aaron. In fact, Steve and I were talking about this earlier. I mean, I think both parties now have extreme wings that are becoming more and more dominant and influential in the two parties. And it's moving the Democratic Party farther to the left and the Republican Party certainly to the right. And I don't think that's a good. I don't think that's a good thing, because I think that the parties need to stay closer to the center. And but both wings are very militant, and they don't trust anybody that's not part of their wing in many ways. I mean, the Tea Party that emerged about 10 years ago, followed by the Trump movement and the Republican Party. There are a lot of good things about them, but I think that they don't have a solid handle on political reality a lot of times. And I think same thing on the Democratic Party. I'll let Steve talk about that, but I think that's one of the major differences from 25 years ago.
So Steve, when you look at this evolution, what do you see?
Well, I was going to say, I miss yard signs, and I miss the caucus process. That shows you how old we are. Dick and I both miss caucuses. It's probably better we move past it, but it was kind of a fun time in politics. It was a little more down to earth, a little more hand-to-hand combat as opposed to what we're seeing today, which is much more digital, a little less personal politics, a little less fun that way for me, frankly. But as a function of the two parties, Dick's right. I mean, things have kind of bifurcated pretty strongly. We're all in our silos, both politically and in our media camps, and that makes things a little tougher. And in modern politics, a lot gets made of, how many D's, how many R's, how many U's in Colorado. Really, for people like Dick and I and others, we put a code score to everybody. Everyone's got a score, right? How do you score a voter? And Dick will score 5% on Democratic score. I'll score 90%, for example. And that's how we differentiate our voting population. We don't worry about party affiliation at all. We worry about how we score people based on a whole list of things we rank them on.
What are some of the biggest? Oh, go ahead, Dick. And then I want to ask you each, what are if you're managing a campaign today, what are the biggest differences for you in terms of the candidate and what you do to be successful compared to 25 years ago? But go ahead first.
Well, certainly, and it goes to your question there. And social media has totally changed everything. It's not going to go away. So I'm not sitting here saying, oh, I wish we didn't have social media. But the fact is, it has made, I think, politics much more coarse and much more confrontational. And I don't think that's good. Not that politics campaigns were all sweetness and light 25 years ago, but it's just so easy to demonize everybody on the other side now, regardless of whether you're Republican or Democrat. I just don't like that, to be honest.
And here's the negative side of that social media that Dick's talking about. For example, if you typed in on Google search a ballot measure in Colorado, let's say the Gallagher Amendment or the Abortion Amendment, you're not going to get the straight news. You're going to get what your algorithm says you want to get, right? So if they know I'm more progressive, they're going to send me information that puts me on the progressive side of that news versus what Dick would type in if he typed in the same issues. And so, we're not even playing with the same news half the time. Yeah. We're playing with different people's news items, and that's not a very, I don't think it's a very good place to be as a function of public policy.
So, Dick, you, in some of the campaigns you managed, and I appreciate your comment about, kind of the vicissitudes of campaigning and how negative it can be. But, you were known many times as a real pit bull.
What?
And I'm not talking about the Denver pit bull ballot issue. You would go for the jugular. And so, how does that play today? Now, I know in your old age you are kinder and gentler.
I am. I love everyone now. No. I do think campaigns should be very aggressive. The fact is that one of the quotes that gets thrown back in my face a lot, because I said one time, Steve, that you might remember this, I said, I think negative ads are a good part of the process. And because you think a candidate is going to tell their own bad story, they're going to talk about their own weaknesses, you've got to have that tension between the two campaigns so voters know what the bad things and the weaknesses are of a candidate. And the only way that's going to get told is if a candidate, the opponent, tells it. And the voters can sort all this out. I have a lot of faith in the voters. And including the campaigns that I've lost. There were reasons, and good reasons, why the candidates who lost. But I don't think it's a service to voters if you have candidates just talking about sweetness and light all the time.
No, I agree. I've had to convince a lot of candidates over the years to paint a black and white picture, because that's what campaigns are about. It's about making a choice, right? So yes. If it's all gray, how are voters expected to make a choice amongst gray? So you need to create a black hat and a white hat and have that conversation. And I agree with Dick. Voters can ferret out whether you were too tough, too over the top, whether your attack was unfair, or whether it was legitimate or not. And that's a part of the art of our business, by the way, is knowing how far to go and how to put things out there. All
right. So Dick, speaking of pit bulls, you recently had an editorial, an op-ed in the Denver Post opining about John Hickenlooper. And that was a really tough piece. You were beating on John pretty hard. And I think I left you a message saying, wow, that's the Dick Wadhams of old. Tell me about that, and let's talk about that campaign, because this Senate race has been fascinating to me, and my sense is, in terms of the race between John and Cory Gardner, that John's probably still going to win this race. But give me your take, and then Steve, give me your thoughts about the race as well.
Actually, Aaron, the first two paragraphs of that column I wrote for the Denver Post were not very complimentary to many of my Republican friends, because I didn't use specific names, but I listed 4 people who were horrible candidates, one of which basically stole defeat from the jaws of victory by stupid comments he made. And what I was trying to emphasize is that both parties have a responsibility to put up the very best candidates they can. And we have failed as Republicans many times in the past, much to my chagrin. And I think the Democrats kind of did this time with John Hickenlooper. Hickenlooper's not a bad person, but he has not demonstrated any real interest in this race. And when I look at some of the people who did run for the Democratic nomination, like Andrew Romanoff, Alice Madden, Mike Johnston, and a host of there were like 6 or 7 other candidates, all of whom really wanted the job. They worked hard to try to become a senator. And all of a sudden, Hickenlooper comes limping back to Colorado after he ran such a failed presidential race, and all the Washington powers that be, and we've got our own powers that be on the Republican side, but all the Democratic powers that be said, get out of the race because we want Hickenlooper. And he's been a horrible candidate. And I agree, Aaron, he probably is on track to win this race because Cory cannot escape the grasp of Donald Trump. But I can't see how any Democrat, including John Hickenlooper, can look back on this election and say, boy, he sure earned the seat. I think he's going to be elected not because of what he did, but because of the political circumstances. And that was the point of my.
All right, what's your take, Steve?
Well, boy, 2-term mayor, 2-term governor. The people know who John Hickenlooper is, right? That's the bottom line. And so all the negative attacks didn't work because they understand who John is. He doesn't need that stuff. And they've seen him at work for 16 years, and so they don't have those kind of problems or concerns. The other thing I'd say is that John is the anti-politician politician, right? And so this just plays into his hand. Suggesting he doesn't want the job probably makes a lot of Coloradans feel pretty good about it, right? They don't want the job either. I mean, who would be a U.S. Senator today? So I think that makes John actually look like an everyday person in Colorado, which has always been his shtick. It's always been kind of his go-to place. And so at some level, it kind of plays to get to John's strength.
All right, so certainly from outside entities, Washington PACs, Republican Senate Campaign Committee, Cory Gardner, John has been under huge attack for the whole ethics issues, where he paid a fine, which was about, I think, $2,750, which was the largest in state history. But I mean, so if you say the largest in state history, that sounds really like a big deal. But then if you say $2,750, a lot of people will say, whoa, some of us have had speeding tickets on that at that level. What do you think the effect of that was? Because I thought those attacks have been effective, have reduced John's numbers, but he's so strong that he's still going to win. So, Steve, you tell me.
John would be up by 12 or 15 points today if it weren't for those ads. So I'll give you that he's only up by 6 or 8 today. He'll probably finish the race in a 6 or 8 point lead, maybe even a little bit more, because of what Dick said about Trump. You can't get away from Trump. But Cory Gardner had a chance. He had a chance to kind of pivot from Trump, didn't take it. He had 2 or 3 chances. He could have made a choice about the Supreme Court nomination, didn't take that chance either, like Susan Collins did in Maine. So I think there's been chances there for Cory Gardner to make a difference. But Cory's looking like a politician. His ads look like a politician. He looks like he's trying to play the game. And again, in Colorado, that cuts against you a little bit.
So what do you think, Cory? Not that he's already lost, and who knows? In this state, things can happen, and they may as a result of some of the ballot issues, which we'll get to. But what should Cory have done differently if you were running his campaign?
Frankly, Aaron, I wouldn't have done anything differently. I think Cory has been an outstanding candidate. I think they've run a very effective campaign. And I know it's easy to say, oh, if he had just put his distance between him and Donald Trump. Well, that might have been okay, except about 20 to 30% of the Republican vote probably wouldn't have voted. And he had to keep the base intact. I mean, the brutal truth is that 95% of Colorado Republicans love Donald Trump. And if they had seen Corey moving away, and on top of it, the things Corey voted for in terms of Trump, I mean, tax cuts, judicial nominations, deregulation, frankly, those aren't Trump policies, those are Republican policies. They would have been implemented by any Republican president, whether it be Jeb Bush or Marco Rubio or Scott Walker or whoever. So I think Corey has run an outstanding campaign, the only campaign he could have run. And by the way, the Hickenlooper ethics problem, first of all, that commission was set up by Jared Polis, which is ironic. And then second of all, it wasn't so much the indiscretions, the alleged violations that he was convicted on. It was the blowing off of a subpoena, refusing to show up at the Ethics Commission, and then getting subpoenaed by the commission, and he ignored that. Frankly, if Hickenlooper, and I think Steve would actually agree with me on this, if Hickenlooper had just shown up, given it his best shot to explain the ethical violations, they would have acted, they would have imposed a fine, and it would have been over with. Hickenlooper is who made it like a 2-week story and gave Cory Gardner and Republicans the ability to attack him effectively on it. So it shouldn't have been as big a deal as it was, but Hickenlooper made it one.
I'll agree that there would have been ethics ads either way, but it wouldn't have been nearly as big as it was. The subpoena was a big problem, and the governor was given contrary advice to what most of us would have given him, and unfortunately took that advice and got into worse trouble than he should have been in at the beginning.
All right, quick question. You talked about candidates, how things have changed, the people running for office. Are we getting, Steve, the best people to run for office or not?
I think you can make the argument that we've never gotten the best people to run for office. On the one hand, on the other hand, you could say, we get the people we deserve as voters. It's a tough place to be. Look, if I look at the Democratic Party bench, people like Jonah Goose, people like Jason Crow, Ed Perlmutter, others that are out there, young up and rising stars of the Democratic Party. Alec Garnett, who will be Speaker of the House in January. There's some real talent there, and I like our chances a lot. And so I see a lot of talent in those places. But if you're asking, do serious people, it's one of the reasons Hickenlooper, I think, demurred about the Senate race. You really want to go through this, right? You want to go through this battle, through this test, raise $30 million, and have your good name submerged and dragged through the mud. That's a challenge for anybody in either party. And I think you are going to get people to say, gosh, I really want to do that again.
All right, well, you listed some impressive names. Dick, what's your sense, including from the Republican side?
Yeah, I mean, listen, like I said earlier, Aaron, parties have a responsibility to put up the very best candidate they can. And I laid out in that piece I did for the Denver Post that we as Republicans have not done that at times, and those people lost. And frankly, they should have lost. But I think this Senate race is a case where the best candidate will not win, and it's because of exterior factors with Trump's lack of any popularity in the state. But 2022 is going to be a much different year. If there is a Biden administration with total Democratic control of the Congress, that could be a very good year for Republicans, because we all know that midterm elections for any president are normally not good, and so there will be opportunities. Polis will be up. Senator Bennett is up. I mean, Senator Bennett might not even run again. I mean, I don't know if he is or not, but I think there's a chance he might not. We're going to have an 8th congressional seat with new lines. The legislature will be reapportioned by this new commission, and so there's going to be a lot on the table. And there could be a backlash to a total Democratic control, just like think about the euphoria of 2008 with President Obama and huge majorities in Congress that got wiped away 2 years later in 2010. I could see a scenario like that happening in 2022 after this election if it looks like we're headed to a potentially big win for the Democrats.
All right, speaking of, go ahead.
What Dick's describing is a pendulum shift. And historically in politics, pendulum shifts are more gradual and not quite as stark. These pendulum shifts we're going through now are huge swings back and forth, and they're happening every 2 years to this point. That really gives voters whiplash, and I'm not sure how long we can take this. But I was thinking while you were talking that one of the great ironies here is that Cory Gardner might be the only Republican in Colorado, which is Hillary Clinton won last time, because he'd be running against Clinton right now, and he'd have a heck of a time.
Interesting, Steve, you mentioned Cory if he does lose, and I'm not saying he's going to, but I mean, he's got a big problem with the Trump thing. Most people who lose for public office in Colorado kind of slip into obscurity. I don't think Corey will. I think Corey has run a great campaign. I think Corey could run for something else in 2022 if he decided to. I don't know if he would, but I think he would be very credible as a candidate 2 years from now.
I think Human's wide open. I'm ready.
It's filled. It's filled. Okay. All right. You talked about pendulum swings from year to year, or every 2 years, Steve. What about pendulum swings within the same year? And here's an example. I'd be really interested in your take on this. Democrats did extraordinarily well in the state in 2018. Big blue wave had success beyond anybody's predictions in terms of sweeping the statewide offices, maintaining control of the House, I think maybe increasing margin in the Senate by 1 or 2 votes, whatever. This year, it seems like the same thing is likely to happen, that Democrats are going to do very well in almost all the offices. Yet, at the same time, if you look at the ballot, we have a number of ballot issues that really resonate, I think, with a lot of the conservative voters in the state. And in fact, a lot of these issues, the abortion limitation issue, for example, and others, the tax issues, Gallagher repeal, if you look at the polling numbers, a lot of these issues are neck and neck, where you have a majority of the electorate saying, we're going to vote for Democratic candidates, and some of them are very liberal, yet we're going to vote potentially to restrict abortions or to cut taxes or to put impositions on fees or to not repeal Gallagher. What is, are voters schizophrenic or what? Steve, you first.
I get the first schizophrenic question. This happens a lot. I could not go back to Dick's point earlier. This feels a lot like 2006, 2008, 2010, where you have kind of a trifecta. So 2006 was 2 years ago for me, and we very well could be right that 2 years from now, the Democrats could be in a real tough spot. But the ballot issue piece really is different. And running ballot issues is very different than candidate issues. I've done a bunch of them in Colorado myself, and it's a very different conversation. And the electorate does this all the time. There's a lot of switch splits with the electorate. You have to be very careful about your messages. I do think this time the blue wave will be so substantial that some things like the abortion measure won't pass. It maybe could have in a midterm year, probably won't this year. The tax questions, though, I think are up for grabs. I think if people out there looking at their kids at school and not having a teacher to go to every day, they're going to take a different view of both the income tax cut and maybe the Gallagher initiative both.
Aaron, remember in 2018, Democrats they truly ran the table. I mean, they won everything. And yet, a big tax increase for transportation went down. A big tax increase for education went down. The Proposition 112, which would have severely crippled the oil and gas industry, went down in flames. So, I mean, they were voting for Democrats candidates over here. They came over to the issues, and they voted against every issue that the Democrats had essentially put on the ballot. So there is an inconsistency sometimes, and I actually think, despite the blue wave that Steve alludes to, which very well could happen, but I think the tax cut ballot issue could pass. The requirement to vote on fees could pass. I don't think the abortion issue, the late-term abortion issue, will pass, but I think it's going to come awfully close to pass, and it's going to be much higher than what the personhood ballot issues were, which was never going to pass. But I do think there are a lot of people who do think that late-term abortion should be regulated, and I think that's why it's not going to pass, but it's going to come a lot closer than the others.
Yeah, the issue you just described was issues versus pocketbook. I think that's a little different dynamic. I mean, on the issues, Democrats are going to win these races. But on ballot measures where it's a pocketbook question, I think taxes might, in fact, be the right argument.
All right, last question. I know we're out of time. National popular vote. It's on the ballot. What's your take on that, Steve? And is it going to pass or fail?
Boy, as a guy who's in a party who's had two candidates recently win the popular vote and not become president, it's the way to go. And I think it's going to pass in Colorado as well.
Dick, what's your...
I still believe in the Electoral College, and not just because of those two elections. I just think that our founders set up a great system, and I don't think the national popular vote really serves our country.
All right. Well, I want to thank my guests, Steve Welchert and Dick Wadhams. I'm Aaron Harber. Thanks for watching. Be sure to vote and make sure you're registered first, and you can track your ballot as well once you send it in. Make sure you watch all of our election 2020 programs so you're well informed when you cast your ballot, and give yourself about an hour to fill it out. It is a long ballot this year. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you soon. Hi, I'm Aaron, host of the Aaron Harber Show. Right now, everyone is stressed out, and some people really need extra support. This is the time to reach out to family, friends, and others. And if you or someone you know needs help or is in crisis, please contact any of these agencies. There are many people waiting to assist you and anyone else who needs help in these difficult times. Please don't hesitate to reach out now to help yourself and others.
The Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award recognizes an individual who, through leadership, skill, and dedication, is advancing the broadcast industry in our state and our nation. Tonight, we honor Aaron Harber. Aaron has worked extensively in the media as a host, producer, political and economic commentator, and columnist. Today, the Aaron Harber Show is the focus of his media involvement. Aaron, it is a privilege to present you with the Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award. Congratulations.
Just make journalism great again. Hi, I'm Aaron, host of the Aaron Harber Show here on Channel 3. As part of our Stop Scam series, I want to remind everyone con artists will try to get your money any way they can. If an offer sounds too good to be true, it probably is not true. Here are some security tips. Don't answer calls or texts from anyone you don't know. Government agencies will never call to ask for personal information or money. Do not give out your Social Security or Medicare numbers, credit card or bank account information, or passwords. Government payments never need to be confirmed in advance. A prize you won which requires a payment is a scam. Never send money or gift cards to someone you don't know. Look carefully at email addresses so you aren't tricked into thinking it's legitimate, and don't open emails from anyone you don't know. Delete all emails which ask you to log in to an account, and protect yourself by visiting these websites. Hi, I'm Aaron Harber. The goal of my show is to inform viewers about a diverse range of topics, from our country's leadership to economic and tax policies to energy and environmental issues, with the participation of the most significant stakeholders in each arena. Our long-form approach gives each guest the time to fully speak his or her mind and gives the audience all the facts, allowing everyone to draw their own conclusions.
Thank God you do your homework, and just doing what you do is enough to begin to let them know what's happening.
I strive to bring together guests with perspectives from across the entire political spectrum to promote problem resolution through civil discourse.
Keith Overman and Glenn Beck and Rush Babe. frightening people and using emotion, fear, guilt, and racism. What a bunch, from the right and the left.
I've personally experienced our democratic system from the inside, and I use my knowledge and expertise on the show to get clarification of major points and expand the discussion to ensure my audience gets the uncut truth.
What is this bigotry against a third-party candidate? Do the two parties own all the voters and everyone else should shut up and stand in line?
We were on the campus together at Princeton University. Her Majesty does not look any different than she did in those days, and I wish I could say the same about myself.
I'm an ardent supporter of transparency in government and strive to play an active role in bringing out all the facts related to our nation's most challenging issues.
One of the things I've learned in life, and you certainly have learned from doing your show, is you got smart people, but they're torn apart, they're polarized. You get into a media environment where it's not things like your show, but the shout shows on talk radio or cable TV, in which there's just this tendency to score political points and be polarized.
Since my days in national talk radio, I've upheld a tradition of being truly nonpartisan, something which seems rare on the airwaves today.
Depending on your point of view, a decision of the Supreme Court might be the wrong one.
I've also found my guests talk to others involved in our nation's leadership, and they have encouraged them to come on the program as well.
We are not final because we're infallible. We are infallible because we're final. Now, no one knows what that means. But
it sounds good.
I know, but what it
sounds
means is we do not have the last word because we are so brilliant. We are, of course, brilliant, but only in the sense that somebody has to have the last word.
It's the focus on issues rather than personal attacks that makes guests comfortable and gives them the chance to tell their entire story. I simply let guests explain their perspective completely, then dig deeper for the audience by drawing from my own knowledge and experience.
Democracy succeeds when you're giving more and more things to people, but the years ahead, we're going to have to ask more of them in taxes and expect less from government.
There doesn't seem to be anyone in either party that has any kind of appetite for asking more of people tax-wise. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're probably right, and that's a flaw in democracy.
Thanks for taking the time to check out the show. I hope this has been helpful in illustrating the nation's need for a balanced, nonpartisan program to shed light on today's issues. For more information, please go to www.harbertv.com or email producer@harbertv.com. And thanks for watching.